Just want to get started because I'm really excited about the panel that we've got coming up. So I've got some remarks first that are about Young Beginning Farmer programs, but also really trying to aim at outreach in general. And what does it mean when you try to reach out to somebody new, beyond just the scope of marketing. And so I've got a history slide here for you. This is how I've been in this job about 15 years. By the way, I'm Gary Madison. I guess that was on the first slide. I work for the Farm Credit Council in DC. The 30 years prior to that job, I was a young beginning farmer of all things in New Hampshire, growing cut flowers, and I had a small herd of beef cattle. When I started in this position with the council years ago, this is what I talked about. Gosh, what a great thing we do in farm credit. We've got this YBS mission, and it's got some parameters set by Congress and by our regulator and those 65 associations. Of course, there were more than that when I started. These are updated numbers. It's sort of a divided responsibility for making sure that this mission thing gets done for young beginning small farmers, and there's the performance for 2020 on there. You can look at those numbers, big numbers. I'm not sure if there might be an easier way to say that loans to beginning farmers made in 2020 were at the rate of $2.5 million per hour, 24/7, 365. A little bit different way of looking at, I don't really know what $22.5 billion looks like, but I know what $2.5 million an hour looks like in new loans to beginning farmers. So the thing about this is that's all the numbers, right? And arguably, the more difficult thing to talk about is the sense of mission, the other side of that sense of mission, which is education of beginning farmers. And I'll point to what our panelist said in her closing remarks, was that she said, don't lose sight of doing the education. The hard thing is, how do you measure that? I mean, we're not giving degrees, right? We're not giving certificates in most cases. So how do you measure that whole element of what we do? And I'm not sure I have an answer for that, but I know it's important. And I think over the course of our panel, my remarks in our panel, we'll be able to figure out a little bit more about how much more important that is. Any kind of YBS program that's out there, whether it's specifically outreaching to minority farmers, to black farmers, Native American farmers, whoever it might be, immigrant farmers, there's components to those programs that have to be in place to make sure that something actually happens. And probably the most important thing is what's it supposed to do? And because we're talking about a mission sense, yeah, okay, some of the mission is get new customers. I get that. But I think I'm confirming what most of you know, that the mission really isn't about just getting new customers. It's about helping beginning farmers succeed. And if you're going to be talking about communicating a mission within an organization, the leadership has to make that pretty darn clear that that's what's supposed to happen, because employees, those who are doing the frontline credit delivery, can't just buy into the mission. They have to own the mission. They have to make it theirs. And that is really about creating a mission mindset within an organization. These are not I would say these are what I have observed in my time of looking at beginning farmer programs around farm credit as the characteristics that associations, farm credit associations that have superior young beginning small farmer programs have as their mindset when they are thinking internally about those beginning farmer programs. That last one on there, that Virtuous Cycle, if you are expecting your customer to be honest and trustworthy with you, that customer gets that and then reflects it back at you. That's what I mean by that virtuous cycle. The other way of thinking about a mission mindset is, okay, so you've got this great mission sense in your association. Now you have to look at the customers. You have to look externally. How are you going to present your mission to the public and help them understand it, and especially to those customers, those young beginning small farmer customers that you're trying to assist with the programs you have, or help them with the beginning farmer education, the financial skills that you're trying to help them take on so that they can succeed. So if you're looking at the outside, I mean, let's go backwards here. You have to have a story that you're going to be telling to the world at large that is really based on knowing what you've got that you're going to deliver to somebody else. What are you offering people? Is it just cheap money? That's not the side of the mission we're talking about. We're talking about the farmer education side. So the hardest of those external factors when you're looking externally to do outreach is the cultural differences. Talking to folks not like me or not like you. And it's really easy, I think, to I don't know, go to Iowa and talk to a bunch of pork producers. For me, it's easy. It's easy for me to go to talk to wheat growers. Even though I was a flour grower, I mean, I have to take it on the chin every once in a while, but I was a flour grower. But the idea of how you reach out to somebody is all about approaching that audience, that individual, with some humility. I don't know. I have not walked in your shoes. I don't know what your life is. I don't know what your problems are. Zach told us a story about how he grew up and the situations he faced that is probably news to a lot of us in the room. That's humility, is listening to what somebody wants. And in particular, and I have this whole TED Talk address up here. If you Google Ernesto Ceroli, Ripples on the Zambezi is his book. This is a real TED Talk. It's about 20 minutes. And the guy's a hoot. We had him as a Farm Credit Council speaker many years ago. His main idea, his concept, is you can't help somebody unless they ask you. Okay, so what does that mean for a beginning farmer program? It seems like we're talking about, I'm going to offer you something, right? And you're going to love it. And you're going to learn something. And I'm going to give you a cheap rate because you're doing it. And I may even pay you to go to meetings. Well, if they don't ask for it in some way, at some part of that interaction, if they don't say, I need that from you, they're not going to take it. They're not going to get it. They're not going to own it. And that's an essential difference that really requires us when we're trying to do outreach and think in terms of cultural differences and reaching out to people who don't look or act like us or are not engaged in agriculture like we know, that we have to shut up and listen. We have to be ready to be humbled by whoever we want to have an interaction with so that they can see that we are sincere in what we're trying to communicate that we might be able to help with. We have some constraints on this outreach stuff. We're Farm Credit, as our commercial bankers, are under the aegis of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, ECOA. On our side, for Farm Credit, we have this really special deal from Congress that says we can discriminate in favor of young beginning small farmers. So it means that we have to take some of our outreach to a group who might be the National Black Growers Council. It's illegal under ECOA for us to reach out to that group and say, because you're black, we're going to give you a better rate. That's not legal. But we can outreach to a group and say, gosh, maybe you're a beginning farmer. Let's talk about the benefit that we can give you because you're a beginning farmer. We have constraints in our outreach that are legal, that are regulatory, but the effect of what we can do is massive. If we think of the goal as maximizing that mission value, if we think of why we're doing this, why we're doing the outreach, and we have already bought into that mission sense of not just trying to find customers, but rather trying to help beginning farmers succeed, that's our great story. That's our reason to go out into the world and say, you know what, we want to help you. How about you tell us what you need, right? Kind of a different approach. One of the things that, speaking to beginning farmer audiences many years ago, I was asked to speak about marketing issues, so direct food sort of stuff, direct marketing to consumers. And I asked the question of the group, so what do you grow and what do you sell? Seems like an easy question, right? I grow cows, I sell beef. I grow wheat, I sell flour, or well, if I'm a value-added producer, maybe. And I said, you know what? I'm a flower grower. What I grow are flowers, and what I sell is love, compassion, and kindness. I get a lot more for that than I do for flowers. I've invested something in that thing that I'm offering in the marketplace that's a vision, that's a future, that's something different. I'm not offering you as a beginning farmer, I'm going to teach you how to do a balance sheet. I'm going to offer you, I'm going to help you understand how to make decisions for your future that are based on your capacity to manage your debt and your opportunities. And we can figure that out. That's different. What we're offering frequently when we do outreach is a little bit too timid. It's a little bit too afraid of engaging with somebody because we don't really want to get in an argument. We don't want to risk anything when we're doing outreach because we don't want to disappoint anybody, which is okay, I guess, but you can only get so far. And that, I'm sorry, I had to put this editorial comment at the bottom. Stop telling people how to do your job. I'm talking to you loan officers. Don't raise your hands. Don't admit anything. When you're doing beginning farmer training and you tell them how to do a balance sheet and a P&L, that's your job. That's not their job. They're only going to do a balance sheet once a year. Beginning farmers only going to do a balance sheet once a year. You can help them do it. Don't train them how to do it. They need a cash flow statement. They need things that they can use. I don't know if they know that, right? You have to help them identify, here are the things I need from you, from your financial expertise. But please stop telling them how to do your job. One of the overriding characteristics that we are required to do, this constructive credit thing, is actually in law in the beginning farmer mandate that Congress gave us. You know what that is. That's our guardrails, right? We can't just go out and pass out money. The other side of what constructive credit is not is, this is the side that we kind of have to explain to beginning farmers why it is that we are not out there just passing out money. We can't make things worse for a beginning farmer. We can't give somebody a loan that's substandard, to put it in official sorts of terms, but we can't make somebody worse off by giving them a loan or giving them something that they can't manage. That puts us right into education. We have to be able to know, in a sense of, I don't know, like when you go to the hospital and you sign on the dotted line that says, you know, we're going to try to take part of your liver out, but we may miss and get your gallbladder or whatever. Informed consent. We're looking for informed consent from the people that we're trying to do business with as beginning farmers. We want them to know what they're getting into. That's constructive credit. If we're not doing that, if we're not doing the education side of this, we cannot possibly fulfill our mission for young and beginning and small farmers. Every time that there's any kind of outreach done, I hope that there are expectations being set, right? Some of the expectation, well, I'm wearing a tie, I must be trustworthy. Yeah, we get all that kind of background stuff. But the expectations that are set with the beginning farmer audience are more about what's the relationship that we're looking for. Should you be interested in finding the lowest rate on this loan, or should you be interested in finding an institution to deal with and the people in that institution that have a mission sense of serving beginning farmers, that they own that mission sense rather than just buying into it as a marketing tool? Because in the end, we need to develop the trust of those customers, of those potential customers, of those beginning farmers. And by the way, a lot of associations are providing beginning farmer education to folks who aren't their customers. That's a great way to build the trust, to get to the point where you're actually able to hear that beginning farmer, because you're educating them and they're not a customer, that they finally ask you for something. Maybe it's going to be a loan, let's hope, but they're going to be able to, in their informed consent state, to be able to ask you for what they want. Back to that idea of giving something of value. if you understand the beginning farmers that are in front of you as an audience and are understand them enough to be able to honestly ask them a question, they'll tell you what they need, rather than just say, oh, I don't have access to capital, or I don't have access to land. Yeah, that's what, the print is all, the ag print or the small farm print is all full of that kind of stuff. That's the glancing blow at the top of the subject matter that they're trying to communicate. If you give them that financial skills education, then you're going to be able to hear from them more of what it is that they need. In the end, we're not trying to make more customers. We're trying to help beginning farmers choose the path that's best for them. It really is empowering them. If you think of this as trying to get customers, everybody is going to be disappointed. The beginning farmer is, we are as providers of the financing or the education. We're trying to help people become independent, informed consent, listen to them, approach them with humility, and leave with respect. All of those things are the mission side, the mission sense of young beginning small farmer programs that numbers can't catch. I don't know how you measure that. I don't know how anybody can measure that. But I know it's pretty real. You know who a good teacher is, right? You know, in your history, you know who the good teachers were. Were they the smartest? Were they the best paid? Did they have the most degrees? All those things we can measure pretty easily. Well, maybe not smartest. My point is, those things that are easy to measure are not necessarily the important things to measure, especially when it comes to a sense of mission. All right. Oh, I want to go back from that. Now, I'm going to ask my panelists to please come up. And as they're coming up, I'm going to give you this brain candy that is GDP in the United States by zip code. And if you weren't humble about where rural America stands, come on up, come on, get up here. If you weren't humble about where America stands, where agriculture stands in terms of its importance in the United States, I hope you look at that. Oh, wait a minute. It's not that we're not important in agriculture. It's just that we're not where the money is. I mean, if you did this for farm credit loans, you'd end up with a very different distribution, number of loans by zip code. This is GDP by zip code. That's where the money is. Just brain candy. There's no point here other than hopefully there's some humility involved. All right, that's my seat. Excuse me. All right.
To be Gary Madison.
All right, you can be here. I got my name tag. You can be Gary Madison. Why don't you do that? And we're now going to have a panel that is. Why don't you go to the next slide, because I think it has a title on it even. The purpose of this panel is to talk about young beginning small farmer best practices, tools, and resources. And what we're going to try to do is show the enormous variation that there is in the content and the methodology of the YBS programs offered by farm credit associations. And I think through the questions and some videos that we're going to have, we're going to unpack some of the reasons for that variation as our panelists describe their programs and how and why they created those programs. Now, there are usually two main components to a Farm Credit Association YBS program. There's the components that are mainly financial in nature, relaxed lending standards, a lower interest rate, paying FSA loan fees, something like that. And then the other bucket of YBS program content is the education content, what I've just been talking about for the last few minutes. Keep in mind that in general, farm credit YBS programs are not about production practices or agronomic practices. They're only about that slice of farm operation that is financial, generally, or farm succession or something closely related to financial skills. Your panelists that we have today represent 4 different approaches to financial skills education, and they're aimed at very different populations of beginning farmers. And they're going to start out with a short description of their association's territory and a quick overview of the programs that they offer before we get into some questions from me as moderator and then some questions from you as the audience. So your panelists are Gina Hultquist from American Ag Credit. Gosh, we're out of order. Chris, can you switch places with Phil? It's not that I don't know your names, but when the videos come up, they're going to be in the right order. All right, Chris from Farm Credit East, Phil Peabody from Capital Farm Credit, and Rachel Sadazan from Ag Choice Farm Credit. All right, Gina, go ahead.
Thanks, Gary. Is the mic on? There, thanks. Gina Hultquist with American Ag Credit, handle their legislative affairs and also serve as a liaison for the YBS and our philanthropic side, which is very important, as you'll hear in a little bit. Our territory is quite diverse, both geographically and from a commodity standpoint, as you can see. And so our approach to handling all segments of agriculture, including YBS, must reflect our service territory, as you see here. So what happens in California is quite different than what's going on in Kansas. So from YBS standpoint, we're doing a pretty good job. Here's our numbers from 2021. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. As Chairman Smith alluded to earlier, and Gary, the system is doing a good job. And over year, our numbers are increasing a little bit. On the small side is where I think our sweet spot is a little bit flat from 2020 to 2021, but we do see that this is where the growth is. I'll also say as far as American Ag Credit, we're spending some time in kind of maturing our data, if you will. And we've gone from entering into checking the Y, B, or S box to actually entering in data. We're entering the date of birth. We're entering the year of first beginning farming, and we're entering in their gross annual income. So our data is real time now. So the last couple of years, we're kind of resetting, some of maybe one of our previous statistics of showing, but we're finding that this is like real data now. So again, let's see. For American Ag Credit, we take the approach as working with our partners, whether it be Farm Credit Alliances, several in the audience here, working with FSA across the states in our territory, and more importantly, really working with some of those nonprofit organizations that have beginning farmer programs, that have the resources and have already the infrastructure in place. And we come in as the credit experts during their curriculum or as a sponsorship for the many events that they have going on and provide that expertise at the time that's needed. So we really look at approach as an outreach, sponsorships, community networking, and then if a loan comes through, that's fine. That's all the better. There was a lot of talk earlier about being at the kitchen table and helping beginning farmers at the kitchen table. Well, that's actually one of the nonprofits that we work with in California, and they're called Kitchen Table Advisors. We came in early on. Actually, Gary came out and helped us kind of train their trainers in credit skills. Putting together those cash flow projections that might be needed as they deal with their cohorts in their 3-year program. And we've actually had a couple success from participating with the Kitchen Table Advisors. They're in Northern California, and a couple pre-COVID had one of their beginning farmer alumni, graduates, if you will, said, I think I'm ready for a loan, and went and talked with one of our Farm Credit, the American Ag Credit loan officers, and put together a line of credit for him to go out and buy a used tractor. So we do see the results of being upfront in the space of the nonprofit world, while not having to do any kind of infrastructure, there at American Ag Credit ourselves. So with that, I'll kind of pass on in the essence of time and be looking forward to questions.
Thanks. So I'm Chris Lawton. I'm the Director of Knowledge Exchange at Farm Credit East. I'm also the Farm Start Program Manager. Director of Knowledge Exchange is a great title, but what it basically means is that I run our customer outreach and education programs, which is a very big part of my role and what we do at Farm Credit East. Farm Credit East covers New England, New York, and New Jersey, and yes, we do have agriculture in the Northeast. One of the things to keep in mind as far as our portfolio goes is that the Farm Credit System finances not just farming, but fishing and forest products as well. And so the fishing and the forest products are very significant parts of our portfolio. Maine has, I believe, the most forested acreage of any state, and 3 of the top 10 fishing seaports by dollar volume are in the Northeast. So in the country, the rest are all Pacific ports. So the fishing and forestry are significant parts of our portfolio. Dairy would be the biggest part of it, though. And I should mention our Farm Start program you'll hear more about. We also do a lot of financial services too, including consulting, tax prep, payroll, that sort of thing. So I'll pass it along to Phil and let him talk about what he does.
Thank you very much. I'm the Chief Lending Officer at Capital Farm Credit in Texas, and the best way to understand the footprint, the geographic footprint of Capital, is essentially 80% of the state of Texas, and so that's pretty broad. North to south, east to west is both directions, 800 miles, and so it's a blessing and a curse. It's a lot of miles to cover, but there's a lot of different agriculture in the state of Texas, and so we're fortunate to have customers in traditional row crop farming operations, corn and wheat operations, or cotton operations, all the way down throughout our footprint. So that means there's multiple growing seasons, or different growing seasons in different climates for those different types of operations. We're also fortunate to have timber operators in parts of our footprint, as well as citrus operators in other parts of the footprint, and aquaculture and coastal harvesters as well. So it's a very diverse footprint, very fortunate, and it requires a lot of different expertise in the organization, but it also provides a lot of stability for the organization. From a YBS standpoint, I wanted to just give you just sort of a live look at where we are at Capital right now. And so what we have, if you look in the middle of this chart, we look at our customers, whether they're youth, YBS producers, full-time farmers, or retiring or trying to retire producers. And so as we looked across that spectrum, we started to say, okay, what is our educational offering, our financial offering, and our advocacy or awareness offering to each of those stages of a customer? And so we started to fill in the different gaps there. We realized it was across all different functions in the organization, and those are shown at the bottom in those color-coded boxes. And so we really just started throwing all of that up on the whiteboard and saying, where does it fit? And our goal this year is to make the transitions. A program for youth programs may be executed well, but does it naturally push those youth participants into a YBS opportunity or YBS type program? Does the educational curriculum, does it build on itself throughout the life cycle or the career cycle for those producers? And so that's sort of a live look at where we are right now. And then our director of YBS lending is a new position in 2022, but specifically focused on the youth element there, the young beginning a small element there, and the socially disadvantaged groups as well.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Sadison with Ag Choice Farm Credit. I'm our Knowledge Center Director, so in that role, I lead our customer education efforts, our programs for young and beginning farmers, industry relations, and government relations. And I think throughout my 14-year farm credit career, YBS has sort of been my bread and butter for, I'll say, about 10 years of that. So it's certainly something near and dear to my heart. When speaking about Ag Choice Farm Credit, who are we? We cover about 3/4 of the state of Pennsylvania and central, western, and northern Pennsylvania. And to give you a little snapshot there of our portfolio, like Chris mentioned, we've got a lot of trees in the northeastern part of the country. So, Pennsylvania stands for Penn's Woods. So forest products is very significant. We're also a very strong dairy state. We have pockets with large, grain operations, beef, poultry, hogs, that type of thing, just very diversified. And then also you can see a number of the farms in our portfolio are also part-time farms. So these are folks that are deriving off farm income, like was discussed a little bit here this morning, but have some sort of farming enterprise to the side. So Ag Choice's YBS program offerings, I put them in a few different buckets here. So we do a number of different things and have done so for over the years, although I'll say we've changed and grown in different ways as well. From a credit perspective, we do offer interest rate reductions, relaxed underwriting standards, that type of thing. We do offer a number of discounts for our financial services. So like Chris, we also offer accounting services, consulting services, that type of thing. So we'll offer discounts. We'll offer loan origination fee discounts, FSA guarantee fees, that type of thing. From an educational perspective, we do both, I'd say, informal and formal types of education. So we have a pretty well-known educational program called Ag Biz Masters that we offer. And also this week have launched a mentor program in collaboration with a number of ag organizations in the state of Pennsylvania. And then also within the last year have also offered a grant program, so both towards startup farmers and to youth. When I step back and look at what have been our strategies for success, what has made us successful over the years, number one, a big part of our strategy has been engaging with partner organizations. So in Pennsylvania, we're very blessed with a very strong support network of ag organizations, and we really have leveraged that to its fullest extent. Not only does it really expand our reach, reaching folks that maybe we wouldn't have reached otherwise, and a lot of the programs I mentioned, especially from the educational standpoint, and the grants are open to non-customers as well. But it also builds our credibility when they're learning about these programs from someone that's not Farm Credit. It really, I think, opens the door to getting them involved with some programs that we offer. And then I also think is very important, it eliminates duplication of efforts. Let's collaborate, let's have open discussions about what you do, what I do, and how can we work together to make that happen. I think that's also seen in our mentor program that we just offered as well. Second, I feel it's important to involve a variety of staff from a lot of functional areas in your organization. So, the credit shop, with the sales management, with, me from the educational arm, it is critical, right? Because we each bring our own lens to the table, and that has been extremely helpful, I would say, from our standpoint as making sure that we're offering a program that meets the mark in really all of those areas, which is really critical. And lastly, I want to offer that you need to be flexible, right? So I think our associations, we're going to be offering different programs because we serve different marketplaces. The industries look different across the country, and that's to our benefit, right? But that also means that our programs likely will be a little bit different too. I also want to share, continue to improve and refine your programs. To be perfectly honest, we had a long-going program called Smart Start, where we offered interest rate reductions based on educational programs. In the last year or so, we actually quit that program. It was a little too complex, both for our borrowers and our staff to understand, and so we went with a much more streamlined approach, sort of a little bit more of a blanket, with a few caveats in between, but more of a blanket interest rate reduction across the board. So don't be afraid to throw something out, because again, that program was in place probably 13 or 14 years, and we said we need to do better. We want to be able to actually reach more YBS farmers, so let's go back to the drawing table and let's think about what improvement that we can make. And lastly, just our YBS farmers are changing too, so we need to be cognizant of that and continue to update really all of our programs and what we can do to offer and to support them.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Rachel, and thank all of you. I think we got a better idea that your programs are indeed different and responding to the customer needs across the country. So, Rachel, more specifically, when you're doing outreach to beginning farmers, one of the things I perceive that education does is help set expectations for those beginning farmers as far as what they're getting into, right? Back to that informed consent thing, but more of what should they expect the performance of that business to be. So you do a lot of farm business planning. You mentioned Ag Business Masters. Planning's a great thing. What do you do to help those participants in your program actually finish it, actually engage and finish it and see that it's good for them?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because it can be a little bit daunting, right, to a beginning farmer of, oh my gosh, I need to put together a business plan. And, you know, you look around the industry and it's like, you need a 30-page with all this information, right? But I think engaging with producers to really start small. I mean, heck, if it's a one-page business plan, that's great. That's like something written down. And, you know, so from our standpoint, of course, we've got some tools and templates available, but I think just encouraging it, making it sort of approachable to be step by step. Another thing, again, to my point of engaging with others, is to point them to resources that can help. So in Pennsylvania, we work very closely with Small Business Development Council, SBDCs. That's through the SBA. They are tremendous, and actually through our grant program, we required our grant applicants to provide a business plan. And you don't have a business plan, reach out to your SBDC. They may be able to help you to do so. And similarly with this mentor program that we just launched, it's actually not a standalone mentor program. We're leveraging SCORE in the state of Pennsylvania, which is very well known for providing mentorship to small businesses, maybe not so well known to providing mentorship to agriculture. But what we've done is we've placed those with agricultural expertise, particularly 5 that we started with here as a pilot, got them trained into SCORE, and we're pointing people to SCORE to get the mentorship that can really, again, make that whole business planning process approachable, asking them the right questions, especially when they're getting started. So that's what I would say, some of what we're doing to get them on the right foot, Gary.
Great. Phil, in your slide, you showed us kind of the progression from FFA to you had a polite term for old farmer. I forget what that was.
Retiring or part-time.
Yeah. So looking at that spectrum of beginning farmer needs, that they're pretty different, right? But they all have something that they need. How do you talked about establishing a progression from what they need to know as FFA kids and on. How do you communicate to students that they're going to need that those financial skills you're trying to give to them at each stage are actually going to help them? How do you make it important?
Yeah, success stories is the best way to get them to grasp that, and try, at least for us, putting people in front of them who have actually done that and been successful there, and then also even bringing like the celebrity element into it, and talking about people like Elon Musk is very popular in Texas right now. So talking about people like them and using that as an example and showing real life examples of how they got started and how they got to where they are now. Trying to really drive the ambition, I think, for those young people. That's been a real key.
Well, let's take a minute and see some of the beginning farmers. If I could ask the folks in the AV booth back there to run the first video. And this is from American Ag Credit.
There's a lot of resources out there for young beginning small farmers. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming. I think one of the most important responsibilities of a farm credit institution is to be the conduit of those resources and be able to provide a little bit of the expertise of where to funnel some of those resources when and where they're needed.
I don't come from an agricultural family. I don't have a background in ag. So I think being able to have partners who support people who maybe don't have that background, don't have that access, is really valuable, because I know there are a lot of people who would want to be in agriculture, but like me, they just kind of didn't know how. So being able to provide that support is invaluable.
When you're new in any industry, it's finding those resources, finding the connections that can help you at whatever stage you need, and that those connections know they are young and beginning farmers. They need our support, and whatever question they may have, we're there for them.
As I was starting my business, one of the first things that you need to do is source capital. As we have grown, we've had to be creative in the ways that we can secure debt or find innovative ways to find the solutions to fund our growth while we're still a small company that doesn't necessarily have all of the history or backing that a larger company would have. And American Ag Credit was also innovative in the approach to looking at how can we find a win-win scenario for us.
resources are very important, and I think there's a lot out there, and I think it behooves the farm credit institutions to be knowledgeable of those resources and to be able to provide opportunities and options to young and beginning small farmers.
Oh, great. So, Gina, one of the first things you said in that video was that you feel a responsibility, American Ag Credit feels a responsibility to be a conduit for resources rather than, I suppose, providing all of those yourself. Why, other than not having to do everything, why do you want to be a conduit rather than just saying, well, we'll do everything for all those beginning farmers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. And if you'll recall the slide of our territory, for example, when you've got different types of customers in California with different needs, as Colorado and Kansas, we can't be a one-stop shop for the resources that are provided through all of our lending territory. So we choose to partner and, again, be those knowledgeable of what is the best resources for a small farmer in Colorado that's wanting to maybe get through, talk through estate planning process. We put together a workshop earlier this year on that topic because we felt that's what was needed and that's what we were hearing in that community. So again, finding the resources, working with CSU, and put together a workshop for that specific topic. It happens in California. You saw Mary Kimball with Center for Land-Based Learning. They have a tremendous amount of resources with their Farm Academy. And as the apprentice there said, she utilizes all her fellow farmers and knowing whether it's when they're ready for an FSA loan or to partner with Farm Credit. When they're ready, we're ready. But again, it's being that resources, knowing all those resources, talking through some options as the previous panel discussed. And I think that's what one of the benefits that not only American Ag Credit can offer, but the entire farm credit system.
Chris, I'm kind of thinking the same thing happens on the East Coast, where I'm more familiar with some of that beginning farmer infrastructure like Cornell or Tufts University's beginning new entry sustainable farm or Nuestra Raíces in Springfield. How do you choose who you're going to partner with of those many, many organizations that are already doing the beginning farmer training?
Well, one thing that we learned, and this was a little bit of a lesson that we learned kind of the hard way, was it was very important for us, particularly with organizations that maybe, as you put it, Gary, look different or act different or are not from the same background that we are, to reach out, make them aware that we want to support their efforts. These are some resources that we can provide, and let them ask for the assistance or the engagement that they want. You know, early on, we tried to sort of push educational programs a little bit, perhaps too much, and it kind of came across as like, hey, we're from Farm Credit here to tell you what to do. You know, instead, we're kind of reaching out and saying, hey, you know, we're here, we want to support young beginning farmers, we want to support your organization. Here are some of the things that we can do. Let us know how we can help. And then, you know, if we're asked, then we do the best we can to fill the needs that they're looking to fill. And so that's one area that we've, I guess, grown in.
Excellent. Let's take a look at another video that highlights a fairly unusual approach to outreach, which, I don't know, in any business I think is pretty popular when you give away money.
During today's event, we'll recognize the winners of our first ever Jumpstart grants, and each grant awards $10,000 to startup farmers in Ag Choice Farm Credit's territory.
It's truly an honor to be a part of a class of such hardworking, talented individuals that represent so many diverse fields of Pennsylvania agriculture. And one commonality we all share is we are the future of Pennsylvania agriculture, and we look forward to what the future brings.
I think I
cried. I saw that email and the subject line was something along the lines of, "Congratulations, you're a Jumpstart grant recipient." And I think I did my little happy dance there on the sidewalk, walking back to my vehicle. These are dreams that I am, really excited to pursue.
It's a great group, a lot of really great businesses that are involved here, and all the great things they're doing that I can learn from or maybe network and work with them in the future.
We see this program really, it's a tangible way to make a difference in the lives of those individuals and their startup businesses, as well as the entire ag industry.
We were at a point where it was pretty financially intensive, so that's why Ag Choice Farm Credit was like to the rescue for us. So we really appreciate the fact that it was just the right amount at just the right time.
It's through grant opportunities like this that pivotal change is made and farmers are able to increase productivity and have greater success.
And since many of you, the recipients, are in the beginning stages of your farm business, we look forward to watching you and your business as you grow in the future.
So Rachel, looks pretty popular when you give money away. Just the right amount of money at just the right time. I mean, that sounds great. But this brand new Jumpstart program is obviously new and just one part of what you do. Could you do that kind of program without the other elements that you do? Would it make sense?
That's a great question. I think it's supplementary to what we do, right? And we were, a year or two ago saying, all right, we already do a lot of things, right? We do the relaxed underwriting standards, the reduced interest rates, the education, all the things, right? But there's a segment we're not reaching, right? There's folks that aren't coming to us for credit for one reason or another. Maybe they don't need credit right now. Maybe, all the whole host of reasons, right? So we were left saying, what more can we do? And that's really where sort of the grant idea came from. And honestly, the results and what has come out of this, and again, we offered it was like October, so it hasn't been that long ago, has just been phenomenal. We had planned to do 10. We ended up doing 15, $10,000 grants. And a big part of it was using our network to reach folks that we would not have reached otherwise. We ended up with a number of our winners and frankly our applicants that were veteran farmers that I don't think knew about Ag Choice, and a number of other types as well. The other statistic I'd like to highlight is only about 40% of our grant applicants had, I looked in our CRM system, had an existing contact with Ag Choice, not necessarily credit relationship, but an existing contact of any sort. Have we ever run across this person ever before? Only about 40% of them had. So that means 60% of the grant applicants had no prior relationship with Ag Choice. And I think that speaks volumes, right? I think for years we thought we're doing a really good job. We'll pat ourselves on the back, but I think this program really made us step back and say, boy, this helped us reach a lot more people that maybe we hadn't been reaching before.
Right. So, yeah.
Could I just wanted to chime in and talk a little bit about Farm Credit East's grants program because it's a little bit different focus than what Rachel does. More than 10 years ago, our board of directors decided to allocate 1% of our net earnings to give back to the agricultural community. And we created a program called Northeast Ag Enhancement. And we actually, in a different take from what Rachel's doing, we specifically exclude individual farmers as recipients. Instead, we give to farm organizations that are promoting education and development of young beginning small farmers. So things like these incubator farm programs. We give a lot to FFA, 4-H, other youth development programs, and we also have a farmers market grants program that gives money to farmers markets specifically for promotion, and we also have a grants program for FFA youth to help sponsor their ag experience projects. So we took a little bit different take, but I guess equally committed to the growth and development of YBS communities.
And just to add on, American Ag Credit, through the last couple of years, took Hawaii on as our part of our lending service territory, and become much more familiar with really the challenges that were going on over there, and partnered with University of Hawaii over there, who has a phenomenal program already, the infrastructure in place, called Go Farm Hawaii. And so we too decided to, first we were going to try to do some kind of microloan program, just didn't work. And so we did, as Rachel and Chris was talking about, just put in place a grant program. So there are $50,000 grants that'll be administered through the Go Farm program, and we're really seeing some great outcomes from that.
Excellent, excellent. So Phil, you're in a senior enough position in your organization that I'm expecting here in the boardroom for most every board meeting, and we haven't really heard. So you're our proxy here for that, I guess. We haven't really heard how a board thinks about it, and I know that that's a hard thing to ask of a staff person to tell us how your board thinks, but I'm going to do it anyway. How does your board get involved in the YBS program whole sphere of activity?
Highly engaged, I think, is the right way to describe it. Highly engaged, not necessarily in their involvement of participating in the program or organizing and leading the program, but highly engaged in what are we doing as an organization to get to that next generation of agricultural producers. Many of those directors, they have kids that they want to take over the farm. They have kids they want to be able to stay and earn a living and raise a family on the farm. Others, they're looking, I mentioned that retiring or that hoping to retire sort of producer stage. They're looking around in the local area and saying, who would I lease my farm out to? Who would I sell my farm to? They want to see young producers that they can see themselves in. I had a director tell me just last night, we're looking at the future, the survival of the industry as we know it is what we're looking at right now. And if we do not support these next generation producers, these young beginning and small producers, the industry as we know it is essentially going to exit. And so it's very, very important to them. The other thing I would say, many of our directors, they find value in the networking element of being on the board and the networking element of meeting with the management teams. And so they also want to see us create that networking opportunity for these young beginning as small producers. And one of the things you asked me earlier about was how do you get that to take with the youth programs, the education component in particular, but how do you get the that young beginning and small producer who's going to make that leap to a full-time and hopefully a successful and financially independent or a financially viable operation. That's their goal in general. How do you get all these things we've been trying to teach and help and create opportunities for? How do you get them to take? And I think the board would say it's about networking, and it's about making sure that they have either, you can think of it as cohorts, you can think of it as peer groups, you can think of it as mentors, or any combination of all of that. But it's very important to the board that the co-op provide those opportunities to the customers also.
Excellent. And just to add on to that, Phil, in the last 2 years, there's been a pilot program in the Agribank district of Farm Credit where the associations are taking selected participants from their independently operated YBS programs and putting them into a peer-to-peer network that is regional. And that's a real step for Farm Credit Associations, not just to cooperate at that level, but to see the benefit that it's bringing to those participants. Well, I think it's time for another video, if that's okay with you. But this one, I don't know if we can say it's about a beginning farmer.
Ever since I was a kid, I lobstered, and my family's been lobstering out of Port Clyde for 4 generations. It's not easy for someone starting out. Things aren't like they used to be. You need to be flexible, hardworking, and have steadfast backing to be able to compete in the industry. My name is Lucas Wilson. I'm an officer in the Merchant Marines with a background in lobstering. I found the Farm Start program online. I searched for Farm Credit East and found their 800 number on the website and called.
My name is Catherine Bison. I work as a credit analyst and a Farm Start advisor at the Auburn, Maine branch. Farm Credit East works with promising farmers that are starting up through a program called Farm Start. That program goes beyond the traditional scope of financing to help beginning farmers, whether it's in their first startup year or they're a couple of years in where they're looking to diversify or expand. The Farm Start program is unique to Farm Credit East as it goes beyond the scope of our traditional financing requirements. Collateral position and financial position are not as important as the traditional banking underwriting standard.
I didn't know if I'd be approved for the Farm Start program. I'm not a farmer. I had no financial records, no profit and loss statements. I didn't even really know what that meant. I came into the program with nothing more than experience and a vision.
The program offers up to $75,000 in debt servicing on a short-term basis, so it's very flexible to be able to provide funds for not only capital or equipment purchases, and it can be revolving privileges for, purchasing some traps and gear.
I would absolutely recommend Farm Credit East. They invested in my experience and allowed me to get started.
If you're interested in the Farm Start program, just reach out to any Farm Credit East branch. We will be able to put you in touch with a local Farm Start advisor to get you going and navigate you along the way.
When we succeed, so does Farm Credit. It's good to have good people behind you.
Wow, great. Okay, so not your typical farmer, Chris. But if you could, you mentioned this when we were speaking ahead of time, where you got this video, and then tell us why the Farm Start program that Lucas is a part of was something that was developed by Farm Credit East.
Sure. So an interesting thing about this is that we didn't ask for this. This wasn't our idea. Lucas Wilson's wife happens to be in video production, and after he got started with the Farm Start program, they were so enthused about the program that they came to us and said, hey, my wife has this skill set. Would you be interested in doing a promotional video for Farm Start? And so Catherine Bison, who's their Farm Start advisor, went out and did the video shoot with them, and they did the whole thing for us. So this wasn't even really our production, to be honest. But as far as what problem Farm Start was created to solve was, it's difficult to get started with operating funds in agriculture. Farm Start is specifically not designed to buy real estate. You can get a land mortgage for that that's secured by the real estate. The FSA down payment assistance loan can get your down payment down to 5%, which many of our beginning farmers take advantage of. And that works to some extent, but that gets you ground. You're still going to need to buy inputs, maybe hire somebody, buy some equipment. And we saw a lot of beginning farmers put those expenses on things like credit cards or really tapping out friends and family resources or that sort of thing. So Farm Start, we started it originally with a limit of $50,000 to provide operating funds, either revolving or single use. And then they have up to 5 years to either pay it back or roll it into conventional financing. We upped that to $75,000 a few years ago, and we found that it's been really useful for people in a wide range of types of agriculture, and it can be combined with other sources of financing. So it could be combined with a real estate mortgage to get property, but many Farm starters are working on rented or leased land or family land, and they just need the operating piece. Others will combine it with an FSA piece of financing or that sort of thing, and we allow people to stack it, so to speak, with other sources of capital.
Excellent. Okay, so we're running out of time quickly here, so let's do a really quick lightning round of answers with short answers from each of you. Your personal favorite extraordinary beginning farm operation, however you define extraordinary. Rachel, go.
Ours was not a credit customer. They used our educational program, but it was a nonprofit that she actually brings inner city youth to a farm to grow the food, market it, teaches the business concepts that she learned in our educational program. So love the impact beyond the actual individual themselves. Like, how can we impact the greater industry?
A young customer from Sudan, Texas, named Ryan Harper. That would be my favorite. Ryan and his wife Melanie. They're in the community of Sudan, Texas, is less than 1,000 people. If you look at farm credit, the flow of credit into rural areas, it's evident very much in their lives, not only in his farm loan and his YBS loan that he got from Capital to get started farming and now is been very successful farming, but in the rural communications that she uses as a school teacher, the infrastructure that they use through co-ops to market their products. Those two, they're huge advocates for the farm credit system, and two of my favorites.
I would say that it's probably a young farmer from Starter, from the Farm Start program from Vermont. He came to the U.S. as a refugee from Haiti several years back, and now runs a farm in Vermont producing saffron. I'll be honest, we had to look up, or at least I had to look up what that even was when he came to us to want to grow it. And I found out that it's a spice used in various types of cooking, and a very expensive one at that, so he's actually doing quite well.
So I'd say ours would be, it's a small farmer that's through the Center for Land-Based Learning program that is selling, or not, actually selling products from their small urban farm west of Sacramento to the mobile farmers market truck that is also run by the Center for Land-Based Learning that is serving some food deserts in some senior housing parts of Sacramento. So it's a real value-added, circular kind of problem that's been solved.
And I'm going to take the privilege of answering my own question. My favorite farm credit operation, or most extraordinary, I think was the term, is livestock operation, crickets. Oh. Crickets. Just like what the audience is like now, crickets. Okay, thank you for laughing.
We actually financed some cricket.
We actually financed crickets. They're for human consumption and mostly for reptile food or bait. Okay, so...
Or in protein bars.
Or yeah, let's not talk about that. I mean, we don't want, it's almost lunchtime.
It's best not to think about it.
Yeah. So, Phil, there are lots of beginning farmers with big dreams, and it often seems to them that the easiest way to accomplish those big dreams is just borrow lots of money from you. So what happens when a beginning farmer approaches you for a farm business loan that's really beyond their capacity?
I wish I could tell you we had that nailed down, and I've got the perfect solution for you. It can be a challenge. That's why we think that education piece is so important, to make sure that understanding good financial management practices, good business management practices, and a good business plan, that's so critical, because if an opportunity comes up, or a opportunity seems out of reach, or as you noted earlier, either the customer or the institution doesn't know or understand that opportunity, being able to pull back to and compare it to the original business plan, I think that's the biggest way to guide those conversations and have those conversations. But they're not easy. And another area where it gets difficult, you may create the original solution for the YBS producer. They may be in business for a year, 2 years, 3 years, where the challenge arises is that expansion opportunity, and they have an opportunity to either expand their herd or expand their real estate or invest in new equipment, and that expansion opportunity to them is critical to making that next step. And to the institution, if you look at the original goal or the original intent of the program was to get them to a certain financial ratios, certain level of liquidity, certain level of solvency, certain level of cash flow. That was the goal. Well, this is now going to change their cash flow. It's going to change their solvency, and it's going to eat up their liquidity. And so having an open-minded enough approach to your program to say, okay, maybe what was originally a 4-year plan is now a 6-year plan. What was originally 5 years may go to 7 or 10 years. That doesn't mean they're not still young, beginning, and small. It may, by the definition, it may, but it doesn't mean our commitment to getting them where they need to be changes.
Excellent. Well, it's a good thing you can't see the timer, so you don't have to get nervous about finishing on time. We have 2 minutes and 26, 25, 24 seconds left for audience questions. But the next thing is lunch. So that if you want to ask us questions or ask them questions, we're very willing to sit here through lunch. We can go in shifts. No, let's just hurry up with the questions. What have you got for us? Yeah, it could be lunch, right? Oh, there's a question.
Gary, I got you.
Okay.
Josh Eilers here. I am a full-time farmer in Texas, as well as a veteran, as well as somebody who's benefited from the YBS program at Capital Farm Credit. And that all came about because I had this crazy idea where I was going to take a breed of cattle and that no one's ever heard of. I was going to raise it in city limits, and then I'm going to sell the beef for twice as much as everyone else. And we were able to write a bunch of great success stories about it. My question to you, though, is how is Farm Credit able to continue to understand the needs of the young and beginning farmers who are going to come to you with these crazy ideas, and how are you able to develop programs of the future to fulfill those needs?
All right, Chris, you got the crazy idea thing?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I would say the weirder the better, because in a real sense, because if you came to me and said, I'm going to do an undifferentiated commodity at a very small scale as a beginning farmer and sell it to wholesale markets, I might question the viability of that economically. But if you come to me and say, I'm going to do this and it's value added and it has a hook and it's got a marketing angle to it and it's specialty because of X, Y, and Z, then I'm all ears, because that may be something that you can get a premium price for and make work at a small scale. So. Yeah, it's not unusual to do the unusual.
I would say our lenders would say, if you got a business plan and there's a chance of success, we'll pencil it out.
All right, well, 16 seconds left. I just want to thank all of you for your coming out here and your preparation for this panel and for bringing the videos and telling us the stories. I think we all have a better idea of the variety of the beginning farmers that YBS programs are intended to serve, and a variety of the types of operations that they are. And it seems that fulfilling our mission means that we have to run fast enough to keep up with our customers. That's the job here that we're talking about, is keeping up with our customers, not giving them something that we think they ought to have. So with that, please help me in thanking the panelists.